Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you saw this really striking image. It's from the source material we're looking at today. On one side, you've got a living mouse,
Hmm.
and right next to it, the very same mouse, but no longer alive. And in this specific kind of image, there's a clear difference. Something visible is there in the living mouse image.
And it's gone in the other.
Exactly.
Sure.
Gone. What is that?
Well, that difference, that sort of presence, then absence, it really points to this phenomenon. It's been talked about for a long time, hypothesized, but only recently, like really proven. It's called ultra-weak photon emissions, UPE.
UPE. Okay.
Or you might have heard the older term biophotons.
Biophotons. Right. So we're actually talking about living things emitting light, like giving off light energy.
That's the core idea, yeah. But, and this is really crucial, we need to be super clear what this isn't.
Okay.
This is not, paranormal stuff, no mystical auras, no psychic energy, none of that.
Right, right. Good clarification.
And it's also not just heat. Standard infrared cameras pick up heat, thermal emissions. This is different.
Got it. Not heat, not ghosts.
So what is this like then?
It's biological and electromagnetic. It comes from very specific chemical reactions happening inside the cells of a living thing.
Inside the cells. Okay.
And the light itself is in the optical spectrum. So theoretically, the kind of light our eyes could detect.
But there's always a but.
But, as the name ultraweak suggests, it is incredibly, incredibly faint.
So faint you'd never see it. Not with the naked eye. You'd need some serious kit.
Exactly. Highly specialized equipment. And that's really our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To go through the source material, especially that recent study by Solari and his team.
The one that really provides the strong evidence that UPE is real, that living bodies make this light, and importantly, that it seems to stop or drop way off when something dies.
Precisely. That's the core finding we want to explore. So we're setting the stage here for understanding this subtle, almost invisible biological glow. Something that was theory, but now, thanks to new tech, seems real and tied to life itself.
That's right. And the idea, biophotons, it's not brand new. Scientists have been kicking this around for decades.
Really? Decades.
Oh, yeah. It was considered controversial, mostly because actually detecting it was so hard. But the basic idea, the biochemistry behind it, was always pretty plausible.
Okay, let's dig into that then. What's the proposed science? How would a cell, produce light?
The main theory centers on something called chemiluminescence.
Chemiluminescence, like fireflies.
Sort of the same principle, yeah.
Yeah.
A chemical reaction releases energy as light. In UPE, it's just vastly dimmer.
Yeah.
But the underlying idea is similar. It seems to involve oxygen
Okay.
reacting with certain molecules, oxidation reaction.
Ah, okay. Like a tiny, tiny version of that firefly glow happening inside our cells.
In a way, yes. Though without the specialized glow enzymes fireflies have. The theory, even back in the 80s, specifically linked this light emission to reactive oxygen species, ROS.
ROS, reactive oxygen species. Aren't those the unstable molecules, kind of byproducts of cell metabolism, especially when cells are stressed out?
Exactly. That's the connection. The idea is these ROS molecules, they're highly reactive. They can oxidize proteins, other bits in the cell.
Right.
And that process can bump electrons in those molecules up to a higher energy state. They get excited.
Okay.
Then, when those electrons fall back down to their normal state, they release that extra energy. And some of that energy comes out as a photon, a particle of light.
So does that mean stressed cells, which make more ROS, might actually glow brighter? Or, well, less dimly?
That was exactly the hypothesis,
Yeah.
a key part of it. But proving it, that was the challenge. Because like we said, the light is just so incredibly faint.
Right. Any signal you detected could have just been noise or some error.
Exactly. Left a lot of room for skepticism about whether it was real at all.
Which brings us to this recent study. University of Calgary, right? Trying to nail this down.
Precisely. And the absolute game changer for them was the technology, an EMCCD image sensor.
EMCCD.
Think of it as a ridiculously sensitive camera. I mean, really sensitive. What's special is it can detect and actually count a single photon event.
One photon. Wow. Okay. That level of sensitivity sounds like exactly what was needed.
It was the key piece, yeah.
Yeah.
It lets you see light that's almost unimaginably dim.
So what did they do with this super camera? What were the experiments?
They did a few key things. The first one involved those mice you mentioned right at the start.
Okay.
They took 4 mice, anesthetized them, kept them on a heating pad just to make sure body temperature dropping wasn't confusing the result.
Right. Control the variables. And the source material notes they were euthanized during the experiment, which, is standard for certain lab protocols, but worth acknowledging.
Yes, that's correct. And the crucial observation was tracking the light emission after that point, watching what happened over time.
And what did the camera show? The big reveal.
It was pretty dramatic, actually. The optical light measured coming off the mice, it dropped significantly within about an hour after death.
Hour, wow.
Yeah, so that was really powerful evidence. It strongly suggested the light was being actively produced by living processes in the cells.
And when those processes stopped, the light stopped too, or at least
Well,
faded drastically.
Exactly. It showed a clear, measurable decrease in UPE linked directly to the cessation of life.
Okay, that's pretty compelling for animals. Did they check if this happens in, like, plants too? Other living things?
They absolutely did. And that was really important for a couple of reasons. First, to see if this UPE thing is, universal across different kinds of life.
Makes sense.
And second, to try and pin down that mechanism more firmly, the connection to those reactive oxygen species we talked about.
Ah, right, the ROS.
So they use leaves from different trees, and they deliberately stress them using specific chemical agents known to cause stress in plant cells.
So they were essentially poking the leaves chemically to see if they glow more.
That's exactly it. And guess what? It worked. Applying these stressors to specific spots on the leaves caused a visible, measurable increase in light coming from those exact spots.
No way.
Yeah, and this increased light emission lasted for quite a while, many hours, the source says, around 16 hours. It gradually faded as the leaves, presumably, recovered from the stress.
Suggesting the ROS production went down as the stress eased off.
Exactly. So the planned experiments really helped solidify that link. Stress leads to ROS, and ROS seems to lead to this light emission.
That correlation seems pretty strong then.
It does. And the source mentioned something interesting, too, that benzoin, which is a kind of local anesthetic, actually caused the highest light emissions in the plants.
Huh. Why would that be?
Well, it adds another piece of the puzzle, maybe hinting that disrupting cellular processes in certain ways boosts this effect. And it further supports the idea that maybe, just maybe, this light could be used as some kind of indicator, a diagnostic tool.
Right, like seeing stress visually. And just to kind of wrap our heads around how faint this really is, did the study quantify it? Like, how many photons are we talking?
They did. It's in the range of thousands of photons per square centimeter per second.
Thousands sounds like a lot, but I suspect it isn't.
Not in terms of light perception. For context, even in total darkness, your eye needs a light level that's like orders and orders of magnitude higher just to see anything at all. This is, for all practical purposes, invisible to us.
Okay. So, summing up the study's findings then, what's the big takeaway message?
The big conclusion, backed up by this really careful measurement with super sensitive tech, is that, yeah, ultra-weak photon emissions, biophotons, they're real.
It's not just theory anymore.
It seems not. All the living things they tested appear to produce this faint light, and it's clearly linked to life processes, and even reflects cellular states like stress.
Which brings us right to the next big question. So what? Why should you, listening now, care about this incredibly faint, invisible glow? What could it mean?
Well, the most immediate, and frankly, pretty exciting implication comes straight from that link between the light and cellular stress.
Right.
If stressed cells, or damaged tissues, or unhealthy parts of an organism produce more of this light, well, it opens up the possibility that you could literally see where problems are happening. Biologically.
You mean like you could image an organ or maybe even a whole person or animal and see hot spots of this light where there's stress or disease?
That's the potential dream, yeah. It's early days, but this research really does open the door to some fascinating applications. The source mentions things like
Like what?
remote health monitoring. In medicine, sure, but also maybe in, like, animal care or even farming.
Farming? How?
Imagine being able to quickly scan a field of crops or look over livestock and get an instant read on their health status just from their light output. No invasive tests needed.
Wow, okay. That would be a game changer. Spotting problems early, non-invasively.
Exactly. Huge potential. But proving it exists is one thing. Fully understanding it is another, right?
Ah, so there are still mysteries. We know it's there, but maybe not exactly how or why.
Absolutely. Despite this breakthrough proof, the exact molecular details, the precise mechanisms, they're still not completely figured out. And what biological role, if any, this light plays, that's still very much an open question.
So the study answered a big question, but maybe opened up a bunch of new ones.
That's usually how science works, isn't it?
Yeah.
The source itself points to some of these unknowns, like could blood flow be involved? maybe carrying the oxygen needed for those reactions.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Or are other parts of the cell, like mitochondria, the cell's power plants, which are heavily involved in energy and ROS, are they key players?
Right.
Or is the light just, sort of exhaust, a byproduct of metabolism shutting down at death? Or could it even be some kind of subtle signaling between cells? We just don't know yet.
It really sounds like this discovery is more of a starting line than a finish line for research in this area.
It certainly feels that way. And, the source even touches on some slightly more out there speculation.
Oh, like what?
Well, just wondering if maybe some animals,
Hmm.
perhaps animals with really exceptional night vision, like cats maybe, could they actually
Yeah.
see this ultra-weak light?
Whoa. A world filled with faintly glowing creatures visible only to certain animals. That's wild to think about.
Pure speculation, of course, as the source notes. There's no proof of that.
Yeah,
But it does make you think about how different species perceive the world, doesn't it? Their senses pick up things we're totally oblivious to.
for sure. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. What's the main thing you should take away from this deep dive?
I think the fundamental point is that living things really do emit a very, very faint light, UPE, biophotons, and we now have strong, measurable evidence for it thanks to new technology. It's real and it's linked to life.
And this incredibly subtle glow is happening constantly. Inside us, around us, all the time, just completely below our normal threshold of perception.
Exactly. It's happening in your own cells right now as you listen. And that maybe leads to the final thought we want to leave you with. We've just talked about detecting something previously unseen, right? This faint biological light, like finding a hidden signal.
Right, a new layer to biology we couldn't access before.
Precisely. And the source kind of hints at this. If living things emit this UPE, and we know they emit infrared heat, and maybe tiny radio signals, who knows what else? The source even mentions tiny nuclear reactions potentially happening in cells as something for future thought.
Okay, wow.
It just makes you wonder, what else are our bodies and all living organisms doing? What other subtle energies or signals are they putting out that we don't have the tools to see or measure or understand yet?
It really underscores how much hidden complexity might still be out there in the biological world. Things happening constantly, just waiting for the right super sensitive camera to reveal them.
Yeah, kind of leaves you pondering this vast, unseen world of activity humming away within every living thing, doesn't it? All these processes unfolding just beyond our current grasp.